The elevator hummed like a sleeping machine, carrying me upward through the mirrored tower that bore my family name. I had stopped by unannounced, a simple surprise, a proud father wanting to see how his son was running things while I was away. I even brought his favorite coffee, still warm in my hand. The kind of small gesture that used to make him smile when he was young. The hallway outside his office was quieter than I remembered. Fridays were usually half days for most of the staff, and the absence of chatter made the air heavy, almost reverent. I paused, straightened my tie, and felt a trace of warmth in my chest, the kind that came from pride and nostalgia combined. Then I heard it. A voice. Low, measured, deliberate. I couldn't make out the words at first, only the tone. Confident, rehearsed. It came from behind the frosted glass door marked Executive Office. My son's door. I stepped closer, thinking I'd wait for the right moment to knock. But the words sharpened through the muffled glass, each one slicing clean. Once it's cleared, we'll transfer everything into his account first. It'll look legitimate that way. My heart gave a single, confused thud. His account. Whose account? I leaned in, careful not to let the floorboards creak. A second voice, a woman's, answered softly, almost teasingly. Are you sure he won't notice? A quiet laugh followed. He won't. He still thinks we're fixing the regional budget. My dad's too trusting for his own good. My breath caught. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. I told myself I'd misheard, that there were dozens of dads in this building, that this was about someone else. But the tone, that half-irritated, half-superior tone, was unmistakable. I had heard it once before, during late-night arguments about responsibility and ambition. Silence pressed against the door. Then came papers rustling, chairs shifting. Just make sure the authorization has his name exactly as on record, the woman said. I couldn't stay. My pulse roared in my ears as I stepped backward, careful, terrified of making a sound. I turned down the corridor, forcing myself to walk, not run, to breathe evenly. Every step away felt like pulling a blade from my chest. I reached the elevator, the world still spinning with half-heard phrases. His name. Transfer everything. Too trusting. Words that clung like stains I couldn't wash away. Voice 1, male once it's cleared. We'll transfer everything into his account first. It'll look legitimate that way. Voice 2, female, are you sure he won't notice? Voice 1, he won't. He still thinks we're fixing the regional budget. My dad's too trusting for his own good. Voice 2, you're certain it's safe to use his signature? Voice 1, perfectly safe. He won't even know until it's done. Besides, it's his company. It should all look natural. Voice 2, and the others? Voice 1, they'll get their share. Once it's washed clean, no one will trace it back. Voice 2, you sound awfully confident. I've planned this for months. He taught me everything about this business. I just learned how to use it better. Voice 2, soft laugh. That's what I like about you. Those last words slid through the door like poison wrapped in silk. Description: 160 words. The office hallway glowed with sterile perfection. Walls the color of fog, carpet so thick it muted every footstep. Through the glass partition, the city stretched in silver lines, each skyscraper reflecting another until everything looked endless and empty. A faint scent of cologne and printer ink lingered in the air, familiar yet distant, like walking into a memory. The light above the door flickered once, throwing a pale shimmer across the company logo etched into the glass. Vales and Associates. Behind it, shadows moved. Two figures, one tall, one slender. Their outlines bent and merged as they leaned close, heads nearly touching. Papers passed between them like secret vows. The hum of the building's ventilation swallowed their voices, leaving only the rhythm of betrayal, the shuffle of documents, a low laugh, a heartbeat echoing in the silence. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I saw my reflection, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the man staring back. Elijah drove home with a hollow stillness spreading through his chest. The steering wheel felt heavier than usual, as if the weight of the words he had heard outside the office door had settled into the metal itself. He told himself to breathe slowly, to keep the car steady, to anchor his mind before it drifted somewhere dark. Yet every mile he covered replayed the voices. Confident, rehearsed, unmistakably intimate. He tried to convince himself there had been some misunderstanding, some context he hadn't caught, some explanation any father could accept. When he stepped into the quiet of his home, the silence embraced him like an old companion. The house had never fully recovered after Lena's absence. Her laughter once filled the rooms. Now only memories lived there, faint outlines clinging to the walls. Elijah walked to the dining table and rested his palms on the polished wood. This was where Lena used to correct Marcus's homework, where Naomi braided friendship bracelets, where the family planned holidays and celebrated milestones. Everything had changed since then, yet the table remained, a witness to the years that had shaped them. He closed his eyes and saw her as she had been, warm-eyed, patient, gently teasing him about working too late. She had believed wholeheartedly in Marcus, convinced he would someday become the firm's brightest asset. Elijah wondered what she would have said about what he overheard today. Would she have defended their son or urged him to be cautious? His phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message appeared, an automated sync from his office tablet. A draft note Marcus had left open without sending. Just a few lines, nothing incriminating alone, yet unsettling. Confirm authorization under Dad's profile. He won't question it. Make sure the timestamp aligns. Seeing Marcus's name in the metadata tightened something inside him. Elijah sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. He needed clarity, not panic. He had learned long ago that reacting too quickly could break more than it fixed. Tonight, he would not confront. He would watch, listen, collect the pieces before deciding what to believe. It was the only way forward. He whispered Lena's name under his breath, seeking steadiness the way a drowning man reaches for shore. He lifted his head and counted the hours until morning, each moment tightening the knot of uncertainty pulling him toward an inevitable truth. "Lena, I wish you were here," Elijah murmured into the dim room. "You'd know what to do." He imagined her voice, soft, steady, cutting through his confusion. "Don't jump to conclusions, Elijah. Look closely. Look kindly, but look clearly." "I'm trying," he whispered. "But I heard enough to feel the ground shift. I can't pretend I didn't." He pictured Marcus as a boy, tugging his sleeve. "Dad, trust me," that small voice once said. Elijah exhaled shakily. "I trusted you then. I still want to. God help me, I still do." Another memory surfaced. Naomi at 16, scolding him after an argument. "You always think Marcus is perfect. One day you'll have to see him as human." Elijah pressed a hand over his chest. "Maybe that day is today." He closed his eyes and whispered, "Please let me be wrong tonight." The house glowed with the faint amber of evening, its corners softened by shadows that stretched like tired memories. Dust motes drifted lazily in the living room, swirling through beams of light that slipped between half-open curtains. The framed photographs on the wall, worn, familiar, seemed to watch Elijah as he moved, their smiles frozen in a time untouched by betrayal. The kitchen smelled faintly of old coffee and lemon polish, reminders of mornings when Lena hummed while wiping the counters. Outside, wind brushed against the windows, rattling them gently, a quiet insistence against the stillness inside. On the dining table, Elijah's phone screen glowed with the unsent text, its pale light casting long, thin reflections across the polished wood. The house, once warm, felt colder now, as if holding its breath along with him. Even the silence felt heavier than before. The morning arrived gray and unwilling. Elijah dressed without the radio, without coffee, moving like a man performing a ritual whose meaning he no longer believed in. The message on his phone, Marcus's unfinished draft, still waited in his inbox like an open wound. He'd read it 3 times before sunrise, each reread carving the letters deeper into his chest. He drove to the firm's accounting branch on the east side of the city, a modest building compared to the glass tower downtown. Henderson's office had always smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant, the scent of numbers and secrets. The man had worked with Elijah for over 20 years, seen the company's rise, seen Lena's funeral, seen Marcus graduate. If anyone could tell him whether what he'd overheard had substance, it was Henderson. The receptionist looked up from her computer, polite smile intact. Mr. Vales? Mr. Henderson is expecting you. Elijah thanked her quietly and stepped inside. Henderson was already standing, coat still draped on the back of his chair, as if he'd been waiting in unease since dawn. The look in his eyes confirmed it. Something had been brewing beneath the calm surface of the firm's ledgers. They sat across from each other, the desk between them scattered with printed statements. Henderson's fingers tapped once, hesitated, then pulled a folder closer. "I've been meaning to speak with you," he began. Elijah said nothing, only nodded for him to continue. Henderson explained that several subsidiary accounts, dormant for years, had recently shown activity. Wire transfers moved through them at precise intervals, each amount just below reporting thresholds. The pattern was deliberate. The funds came from companies with no clear business purpose and ended up in consulting retainers under Elijah's name. His name. That single detail dropped through him like a stone into deep water. There were no signatures yet, only digital authorizations prepared, waiting. Whoever had arranged this had access, timing, and a knowledge of the firm's internal controls. Elijah felt the air tighten around him. Proof was building, but not enough to accuse. Not yet. He thanked Henderson, gathered the copies, and decided he would wait, watch carefully, quietly. To save his son, he first had to understand him. "Elijah, you've worked with me for 2 decades, Robert. Don't sugarcoat it." Henderson, "Then I'll say it plain. These transfers, they're structured. Someone's moving money in patterns I've only seen in laundering operations." Elijah, "Through our accounts?" Henderson, "Through dormant shells tied to the firm. The authorizations are drafted under your digital ID, but they're not finalized. Yet." Elijah, "Could it be a clerical mistake?" Henderson, "No. Whoever's behind it knows exactly where to hide fingerprints." Elijah, "Do you have a name?" Henderson, "Not directly. Just access logs. It's internal." Elijah, "Internal." He repeats the word, heavy, final. Henderson, "Elijah, I can dig deeper quietly. But if this involves your family." Elijah, "Then it stays between us for now. Until I know for certain." The office was a narrow rectangle of light and dust, blinds half closed against the pale morning. Folders towered in uneven stacks, papers marked with highlighter trails and pencil notes curling at the corners. The hum of a printer filled the silence between their words, steady and mechanical, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Outside the glass door, the receptionist's laughter drifted faintly, a normal sound that clashed with the unease settling in Elijah's stomach. Henderson's tie hung crooked, his sleeves rolled up, the ink on his fingers smudged like guilt itself. Elijah's eyes lingered on the firm's letterhead stamped across each report, Vales and Associates. Beneath it, his own name repeated in cold black ink, over and over, proof of existence or the weapon that could destroy him. The invitation shimmered in Elijah's inbox like bait wrapped in gold. The Bennett Foundation Charity Gala, hosted by Marcus and Chantel Vales. The words tightened his chest. After the meeting with Henderson, the thought of walking into a room filled with donors, champagne, and his son's laughter felt unbearable. Yet something in him, pride, fear, curiosity, made him accept. The ballroom gleamed beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen rain. Every detail screamed affluence, the music soft and expensive, the air perfumed with power. Elijah kept to the edges, his tuxedo a shield among the glitter. He hadn't seen Marcus yet, but he spotted Chantel easily. She commanded the room without effort, every movement practiced, every smile controlled. She noticed him before he could disappear. "Elijah! You came," she said, gliding toward him with a warmth that looked rehearsed. Her presence unsettled him. Too perfect, too knowing. He remembered Lena's gentleness, the way she spoke with sincerity rather than charm. Chantel, by contrast, used words like transactions, pleasant but calculated. She linked her arm through his and steered him toward a cluster of guests. As she introduced him, Elijah noted how often she used our firm, our accounts, our name. Each pronoun chipped away at the boundaries he thought still existed. A waiter passed with glasses of champagne. Elijah took one, mostly to keep his hands from trembling. Chantel leaned closer, her perfume sharp and deliberate. "You must be proud," she murmured. "Marcus has been handling the financials brilliantly. He's even reorganizing some older documents, streamlining everything in your name for consistency." The word name lingered like smoke. He smiled politely, but the muscles in his face resisted. "That's good," he said softly. "Consistency matters." Inside, dread threaded through his veins. The confirmation he'd been denying was now dressed in silk and sequins, smiling at him from inches away. He excused himself after a few more pleasantries, retreating toward the balcony for air. From there, he could see Marcus shaking hands across the room, laughter bright and untroubled. Elijah couldn't decide which hurt more, the deception or the ease with which it was worn. "Chantel." "Elijah! You came. I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Elijah. Wouldn't miss it. You've built quite the evening." "Chantel. It's Marcus's doing mostly. He's been working late, all those financial restructurings. I told him he needs balance, but he's just so dedicated." "Elijah. Dedicated," he echoed. "That's one word for it." Chantel, smiling. "He says you taught him everything. You should see the reports he's consolidating. There's so much paper in your name, it's almost poetic." "Elijah. Paper in my name?" Chantel. "Oh, don't look so serious. Just formalities." "Elijah. Of course." Pause. "You always did have a way of making business sound beautiful." Chantel. "And you always look for meaning where there's only strategy." The gala unfolded like a dream money had purchased long ago. Crystal chandeliers poured light onto gold-trimmed tables. The hum of conversation mingled with the soft sweep of violins. Waiters in black gloves drifted between circles of laughter, their trays reflecting fractured light across the marble floor. Chantel shimmered in silver silk, her smile polished to perfection, the kind that drew admiration before suspicion. Her eyes, though, held no warmth. They measured, assessed, catalogued. Every gesture was precise, every glance deliberate. Beyond the glass walls, the city skyline glowed indifferent and distant. Elijah stood at the balcony railing, the chill cutting through his tuxedo. From inside, her laughter reached him again, a sound too bright, too perfect to be trusted. Monday arrived wrapped in the thin gray light of routine. Elijah returned to the firm early, long before the others filled the halls with noise and motion. The building, emptied of chatter, felt honest in its silence, as though it had nothing left to hide. He told himself he was only there to catch up on paperwork, but a deeper reason gnawed beneath the surface. He needed proof, something tangible to match the unease curdling inside him. In his office, everything appeared untouched, immaculate, except for a single manila folder lying slightly askew on his desk. He frowned. He hadn't left it there. The label on the corner read Croswell Infrastructure Retainer, Draft. He opened it slowly, scanning the first few pages. Then he froze. At the bottom of page 3 sat his signature block, name typed, formatted, dated for the coming month. The contract hadn't been signed yet, but the field was ready, waiting for his digital authorization. A quiet trap disguised as ordinary paperwork. He turned the pages again, searching for clues, initials, handwriting, anything. There, a marginal note in blue pen, a line with Marcus's files. It wasn't enough to accuse, but it was enough to confirm suspicion. When Marcus arrived later that morning, confident and cheerful, Elijah watched him with new eyes. Every gesture, every word was an exercise in control. Elijah spoke calmly, asked neutral questions, but studied every flicker of his son's expression. Marcus's answers were too polished, too rehearsed, like someone who'd practiced lies until they sounded like truth. By the time Marcus left for another meeting, Elijah knew. The plan wasn't impulsive. It was engineered. Someone had rehearsed every step. He closed the folder, the weight of it suddenly immense. A signature could build empires, or destroy them. And someone had decided his would do both. Elijah, Marcus, I found a draft on my desk. Croswell Infrastructure. Is that one of your projects? Marcus, yeah, We're restructuring their contracts. Probably just routed through your office by mistake. Elijah, it had my authorization block, future date, 2. Strange detail for a draft. Marcus smiles easily. That's how the system templates work, Dad. Autofills from executive accounts. Nothing to worry about. Elijah, and the handwritten note? Marcus, probably from one of the juniors. They're still learning where to file things. Elijah, I see. Marcus, you trust me, right? Elijah, of course. I just like to know where my name ends up. Marcus laughed softly, and didn't blink. Elijah's office gleamed under the pale fluorescence, its surfaces too clean, too deliberate. The framed degrees and family photographs reflected the morning light in fractured angles. The single folder sat in the center of his desk like a quiet accusation, the company's logo pressed faintly into the paper. When Marcus entered, his tailored suit caught the glow, his posture effortless. He leaned against the doorframe, smiling, the same smile he'd used since childhood to dissolve tension. The hum of printers, the faint buzz of lights, the rhythm of footsteps in distant corridors, all blended into one steady pulse beneath their conversation. When he left, the silence that followed felt heavier than guilt itself. Sleep never came. Elijah sat at his desk long past midnight, the glow of his monitor reflecting off the empty glass beside him. The folder labeled Internal Transfer Review blinked like a quiet accusation on the screen. He hovered over it for nearly a minute before opening it, pulse drumming in his throat. The recording began with a burst of static, then a clipped voice. Calm, professional, his son's. The words were fragmented, but their meaning was unmistakable. Phrases like move the funds, under his authorization, and wash the accounts clean tangled through the noise. Elijah's name appeared more than once, spoken like a shield, an excuse for legitimacy. He stopped the playback, hands shaking. His name, his identity, turned into camouflage for a crime. He restarted the file, this time listening past the pain. There were other voices too, a woman's low and certain, and a few others he couldn't place. The tape cut out mid-sentence, replaced by silence and faint mechanical whirring. Incomplete, but damning. He needed help confirming its origin. That's when he called Eric, Naomi's husband, quiet, dependable, good with technology. Eric came before sunrise, eyes red from lack of sleep but steady. They sat in the office together, replaying the audio through noise filters, isolating words. The edits made it clearer, liabilities under Elijah's shell, deadlines before quarter close. By dawn, Elijah leaned back, exhausted, heart heavy. It was real. It was personal. Yet still not enough to confront Marcus. Not yet. Without the full recording, it could be dismissed, denied, rewritten. He stared at the waveform frozen on the screen and whispered to the dark, "How much proof do I need before I stop being his father and start being a witness?" Elijah, Eric, can you clean it up? The static, it's hiding words. Eric, I'll try. Whoever recorded this didn't mean it to be found. He adjusts levels, voices emerge faintly. Voice, male, under his authorization. He'll never check the subledgers. Voice, female, and if he does? Voice, male, we'll tell him it's part of restructuring. His name gives us cover. Elijah, that's Marcus. Eric, quietly, I know. Pause. The hum of the machine. Elijah, keep this between us. Not Naomi, not yet. Eric, understood. The recording ended, but its echo refused to fade. The office was bathed in the cold blue light of early morning. Dust shimmered through narrow slits of blinds, catching on the slow drift of breath between them. The laptop screen flickered, frozen on a jagged waveform that looked almost alive. Elijah's coffee had gone cold hours ago. The faint buzz of the speakers filled the silence, like something breathing on the other side of the glass. Eric sat nearby, cables coiled around his fingers, his face drawn with quiet dread. Outside, dawn broke pale and indifferent, sunlight falling across two men who no longer believed in morning. The morning after the recording, Elijah sat by the kitchen window, staring at the fading outline of dawn. The evidence still echoed through his head. Marcus's voice, calm and confident, turning his name into currency. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. The truth sat in his chest like a stone that refused to move. When the doorbell rang, he almost didn't answer. But the second chime was soft, familiar. Naomi stood outside, her hair tied back, eyes clear but worried. She held a paper bag of pastries like it was an offering for peace. "Eric told me you've been off," she said, stepping inside before he could protest. "So I came." They sat at the table, the same table where Lena used to correct homework, where laughter once lived. Naomi poured coffee and studied her father's face. Her expression carried a mix of affection and quiet frustration. Elijah wanted to protect her, but the weight of what he knew pressed against his ribs until words began to escape. He didn't tell her everything, not the recording, not yet, but enough that her expression changed from concern to disbelief, then anger. "I thought I was imagining it," she whispered. "Marcus hasn't been himself for months. He keeps secrets from me now. From everyone. Chantel's always there, whispering, managing, smiling too much." The more she spoke, the more Elijah saw how the pieces fit. The distance, the shifts in behavior, the way power had reshaped his family. He realized then that Naomi, with her stubborn honesty, was the only one who could still make him act. Watching wasn't enough anymore. Waiting would only let the rot grow. He reached across the table, took her hand, and said quietly, "It's time to see how deep this goes." "Naomi, you look pale. What's wrong, Dad?" "Elijah, just work. It's heavier than usual." "Naomi, don't lie to me. You only look like that when something's broken." Elijah sighs. "Your brother. Something's off with him. With Chantel too. I need to know if I'm imagining it." "Naomi, you're not. He's distant. Secretive. I've called, and he barely answers." "Elijah, then you've noticed it too." "Naomi, I have. And I don't think it's just stress. She's changed him." "Elijah, then we find the truth together." "Naomi, no more watching." "Elijah, no more." Morning light filtered through the curtains in fractured gold, catching on the steam rising from untouched mugs. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and something else. Old paper, old fear. Naomi sat across from her father, the glow of the sun outlining her face like a promise. A clock ticked faintly on the wall, marking seconds that felt louder than words. Outside, a lone bird sang over the hum of distant traffic, life going on, indifferent to family ruin. When Naomi reached for Elijah's hand, the room seemed to breathe again, quietly, carefully, as if bracing for what came next. Evening settled with the quiet precision of a trap. Elijah arrived at Chantel's invitation, a brief, polished message that had read, "We should talk privately, for everyone's sake." He told Naomi he'd handle it. He didn't mention the unease gnawing at him all the way to Chantel's penthouse. She greeted him with warmth so measured it felt rehearsed. The apartment glowed in amber light, everything too perfect, too intentional. Wine glasses on the table. A folder already waiting beside them. "Just business," she said as they sat. But nothing about this felt like business. She spoke smoothly, about Marcus's workload, the company's upcoming audits, legal contingencies. Then, with a delicate shift in tone, she slid the folder toward him. Inside was a document granting a limited power of attorney over his assets to Marcus, for operational convenience. Elijah read the words once, then again. They were tidy, technical, and poisonous. Chantel's voice softened. "It protects you," she said. "The board trusts Marcus, but they still tie everything to your name. This makes it cleaner, safer." Her kindness had edges. She smiled like someone doing him a favor, but every syllable was a negotiation wrapped in silk. For a moment, Elijah almost believed her. The logic, the calm. But he saw the faint tremor in her polished poise, the flick of her eyes toward the adjoining room where a shadow moved. Perhaps a lawyer, waiting. He pushed the papers back, steady but firm. "Not tonight." Chantel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough to reveal the cold beneath. Chantel, you've carried this company long enough. Let Marcus take some of the weight. Elijah, weight or control? Chantel, both. Control is just organized trust. Elijah, that's a lovely way to describe surrender. Chantel, please, Elijah. This protects you. If something happens, insurance, investigations, it won't fall on your shoulders. Elijah, you think I don't see what you're doing? Chantel, I think you want peace. Elijah, peace doesn't come from signatures. Chantel, then you might want to reconsider what war costs. Her tone made the word war sound personal. Description: 90 words. The penthouse glimmered with quiet menace. Marble floors, amber lamps, the faint hum of a distant city below. Outside the window, the skyline bled light into the glass, reflecting two silhouettes across the polished surface of the table. Chantel's perfume hung in the air, sweet but heavy. A single pen lay between them, glinting under the chandelier like a waiting blade. Somewhere behind a half-closed door, a man's shadow shifted, silent and still. Elijah rose without touching the papers. The air between them cooled, and the city lights blinked like distant judgment. The next morning, Elijah met Naomi and Henderson at his kitchen table. It was no longer a place for coffee or conversation. It was an investigation room. Stacks of documents covered the surface: bank records, invoices, printouts of wire transfers. Henderson's hands moved steadily through them, tracing paths that led through names Elijah had never heard, companies that didn't exist, signatures that weren't his but could have been. Every line pointed back to the same conclusion. Money had been moved, and his identity had been used to make it clean. When they compiled everything into a single file and took it to the district prosecutor's office, the air outside smelled of rain and exhaustion. The assistant who met them was polite, distant, promising to review and advise next steps. Elijah recognized the tone, the voice of a system that preferred time over truth. By evening, the first pushback arrived. A call from the firm's compliance department, just checking on internal reporting accuracy. Then another from a legal associate asking whether Elijah intended to make noise. Hours later, a compliance officer showed up at his door, friendly, smiling, claiming to offer support. Her tone was syruped with warning. Elijah realized then that exposing Marcus might destroy everything: Naomi's safety, his name, their livelihood. Yet silence would finish the job anyway. Truth had turned from salvation into evidence, and evidence into threat. Dialogue: 80 words. Naomi: Dad, once we file this, there's no turning back. Elijah: There's already no turning back. Henderson: They'll come after you legally first, then personally. Are you ready for that? Elijah: I'm too old to be afraid, Robert. I'm just tired of being quiet. Phone rings. Elijah answers. Compliance officer: Mr. Vales, we just wanted to ensure transparency. We heard you've been reviewing internal records. Elijah: Yes. I'm making sure the right people see them. Pause. Compliance officer: Let's hope you know who that is. The kitchen lights cast long shadows across the paperwork, the edges curling from damp air. Outside, thunder murmured above the city, a low warning sound that seemed to echo through the walls. Henderson's pen clicked nervously, tapping beside a ledger column marked undisclosed. On the counter, Elijah's phone glowed with unanswered calls. Compliance, partners, press. Naomi stood by the window, arms crossed, her reflection trembling in the glass. The storm finally broke, rain hammering against the panes like a verdict being written in real time. The rain had barely stopped when Marcus arrived, unannounced, drenched and trembling. His knock wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the sound of something ending. Naomi stood by the door, refusing to move until Elijah told her to let him in. Marcus stepped inside, eyes flicking across the scattered papers on the table. The ledgers, contracts, printed transactions. For a heartbeat, he looked like the boy Elijah once knew. Eager, proud, terrified of disappointing his father. Then his expression hardened. You went digging, he said quietly. Elijah didn't answer. The silence between them swelled, drawing Chantel in from the hallway where she had been waiting, flawless even now. Behind her came Henderson and Eric, summoned for clarity but caught in the storm instead. The conversation that followed didn't unravel, it exploded. Accusations, half-truths, and grief collided in waves. Marcus's composure cracked. The fear beneath his arrogance surfaced. He claimed he was in over his head, that Chantel had convinced him it was harmless, just financial restructuring. Chantel's defense was colder. She called it strategy, not crime. Elijah's fury trembled on the edge of despair. Everything he'd built, every lesson he'd taught, twisted into this moment. When Marcus tried to grab the files from the table, Elijah reached first. Papers tore, a glass shattered, and in the chaos a shove sent Marcus stumbling backward, striking his head against the corner of the counter. The sound silenced everyone. Elijah, tell me it isn't true. Marcus, you wouldn't understand. You built the rules that trapped me. Naomi, you trapped yourself, Marcus. Chantel, stop this. Everyone here is destroying the family over numbers. Elijah, numbers? They were my life's work. Marcus, then you should have retired when you had the chance. A scuffle, papers scatter. Elijah, don't touch that. Marcus, I'm fixing this. Crash. Silence. Naomi, Marcus, oh God. The house fell into a trembling quiet. Rainwater dripped from Marcus's coat, pooling on the hardwood like dark punctuation. Torn documents lay across the floor, soaked in spilled coffee and blood from a small gash on his forehead. Chantel stood frozen, her reflection fractured in the glass cabinet behind her. Naomi knelt beside her brother, whispering his name. Elijah's chest heaved. The thunder outside rolled again, low and endless, as if the world itself refused to let the sound die.